Is Week 11 going to be a dull weekend of college football? Well, maybe, because the top matchups could be lopsided or complete blowouts. As in years past, some of these games would have been major contests with high stakes. Nevertheless, we'll have to wait and see because this is the second weekend of November and we're talking about it well before the start of the season. The games we are going to discuss begin with Indiana on the road in Happy Valley to face the Penn State Nittany Lions. The Hoosiers have to win some big games before this date and to make it mean something to the playoffs. The next bout is in Tuscaloosa with two premier SEC programs, LSU versus Alabama. Will the Tigers have enough firepower to hang with Bama? And a Big 12 playoff game. BYU heads to Lubbock to battle Texas Tech. Will the Provo Cougs handle the Tortilla Air Raid? Let's dive into Week 10's most important games for another weekend in November. Game 1. Indiana gets in the cage with the Penn State Nittany Lions. This matchup will only matter if by this point of the schedule, Indiana has one, maybe two losses on their record. But the same applies for the home team, as both schools will have faced Oregon and Iowa on the road. Regardless of all that, I still think this game will be entertaining enough to watch. Starting with the away team, Indiana, who we have discussed in previous SpOp previews in Week 4 against Illinois and Week 7 against Oregon. I don't think it's likely the Hoosiers win out till this point of the season, but if they did, holy moly, would that be a tremendous run. Even more impressive than last season and could put them into a similar seat they had when they came out of the Ohio State game in 2024 with things not going their way. Nevertheless, this team still has potential with a great quarterback in Fernando Mendoza and an excellent offensive line in front of him. Plus, they have even more weapons this season in the backfield and out wide. The Hoosiers, no matter what, are going to be a hard team to beat in the Big Ten. For this one, the running game has to prevail in the trenches. If Indiana can win leverage enough, the Hoosiers' chances of doing something never done before, that being a victory over Penn State in Happy Valley, is feasible. Slide in note, Indiana only has 2 wins over the Nittany Lions. The away team has to establish a proper run attack to have a shot at the never-done opportunity. Plus, you will keep the Nittany Lions defense honest enough to expose them through the air. For the Indiana defense, they will have to play lights out. The Hoosiers' run defense should be good enough to slow down the Penn State ground attack because they have most of the pieces in the front end that was the second best run defense in 2024. Even though Ohio State exceeded that average and Notre Dame more than doubled it on the ground when Indiana faced them. That means the DBs for the away team are essential. Actually, I think the secondary will be vital in shutting down Drew Aller and the Nittany Lions through the air. The Hoosier secondary has 2 of the top 3 2024 DBs back and brought in reinforcements from the portal. That pair returning helped contribute to the 12th best pass defense last season. This might be enough to keep this from striking distance for a win in Happy Valley, especially if the games earlier on the schedule goes well. Now to Penn State, who we've also talked about in our big Week 5 SpOp previews against Oregon and another massive matchup against Ohio State for Week 10, which might play a factor for this game with a win or loss. If the Nittany Lions get a big Big 10 win in Columbus, could they have a bit of a hangover from overcoming the Buckeyes? Or with a loss, could we see Penn State regroup and look to squash their Week 11 opponents? A lot to think about there. I think this matchup will come down to Drew Aller and the front 6 of the Penn State defense. Starting with Aller, who is an offseason Heisman favorite, and this could be the year the Nittany Lions have a player win that trophy for the first time since 1973. Now, I don't think Penn State's quarterback will have a crazy stat game, although Aller, when he is given the call, should deliver with the weapons around him this season. Aller just needs to make some throws to keep the chains moving, because we should expect Indiana to stuff the run enough and force Penn State into some 3rd and long scenarios. but I am anticipating some big gains with some play action calls. The Nittany Lions defense will have to bring it, even with Happy Valley making it extremely loud. Slide in note, Indiana would have already experienced some hostile environments in Iowa City and Eugene. Anyways, Penn State's front six will again be key by stopping the run or preventing passes leaked out from the backfield. It is going to lighten the load on the secondary, which can create some turnover opportunities, assuming the scoreline forces the Hoosiers to pass it more. That can allow the front four of the defense to feast with some more sacks in the Indiana pocket. So, if Indiana can establish the run and the secondary play discipline, Hoosier fans, I'm telling you there's a chance. And if Penn State can prevent that from happening, with Drew Aller coming in clutch and the front six holding the edges, plus being solid in the middle, the Nittany Lions' chances of returning to the Big Ten championship game increases. It's a must-win scenario for either program, as I believe the Big Ten will have another year with 4 teams making the college football playoff. Just which 4 will it be? Game 2, LSU is on the road to face the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa. The Tigers are one of the few programs in the last 20 years to get multiple wins in T-Town. When Coach Ed Orgeron was in charge in 2019, LSU won 46-41, and Les Miles getting 3 over the Tide for the Tigers. Miles got 2 wins over Alabama when Nick Saban was in charge. But LSU doesn't have either of those guys leading the program. They have good old Brian Kelly, who has gotten a win over the Tide in 2022, but that game was in Baton Rouge, not T-Town. That was the only good outing against Alabama since good old Brian Kelly has been in charge of the Tigers, as Alabama has averaged 42 points against LSU for the last 2 meetings. As this game doesn't look promising for the away squad, still, we're going to try to find some positives for the Tigers. Let's start with Alabama, who we have talked about 4 times in our SpOp previews. Week 1 against Florida State, Week 3 against Wisconsin, Week 5 against Georgia, and Week 9 against South Carolina, where we covered returners, the offense, the defense, and their new offensive coordinator. For this one, the most important position group for the Tide is their secondary, who have 3 starters from last year's encounter back. Hopefully the 3 and Keon Sabe stay healthy enough to play in this November bout. This unit made last season's meeting one of the worst games for Garrett Nussmeier, with one of those DBs, Bray Hubbard, getting an interception. It will be a massive hill to climb for Nussmeier, as the Tuscaloosa crowd should make it hard to communicate. Alabama also has 2 of the top 4 defensive contributors from that 2024 slaughter in Baton Rouge returning, Deontay Lawson and Justin Jefferson. Lawson had a great night in Death Valley with a tackle for loss and an interception. Again, the Tide's defensive hill that is more of a Bama mountain will be a treacherous journey for Nussmeier and company. The offense for Alabama might be the element that allows LSU back into the game, because the passing juggernaut that I'm predicting could leave enough time on the clock. As last season, Jalen Milroe was lethal on the ground, which drained the LSU defense. Bama won't have that angle in this year's game. The Tide either embrace the run a bit more to chew the clock, or are extremely efficient through the air. I expect Ryan Grubb, the new Bama OC, will have a couple off-speed pitches for this big SEC game against the LSU defense. Now to the away team, the LSU Tigers, who won't have their top targets from 2024 back for this contest. Mason Taylor, Josh Williams, and the late great Kyron Lacey are out of the lineup. Guys like Aaron Anderson and portal pickups will have to pick up the slack of production. Maybe LSU tries to, I guess, if you want to call it, play it safe, because running the ball might be the better solution. Now hear me out, Tiger fans. I get Nussmeier is a great passer. However, lessening the load through the air might be the answer. Plus, you also have a younger offensive line than last season. Therefore, you might not have enough time to air it out. I think handing it off to Caden Durham a bit could open up the passing game, where more crucial and probably more convertible moments that will let Nussmeier deliver some blows to the Alabama defense. Joe Sloan and Cortez Hackton can't have the same 2024 approach because they don't have the same weapons or the pocket protection luxuries you had in last year's game. So, will Alabama's new offense keep their foot on the pedal, or will they just punt it back with time for the LSU offense to operate? And will the Bayou Bengals game plan be more than just letting Garrett Nussmeier sling it? We'll have to wait and see, because this game will help determine who is playing in the SEC championship game, and as we continue to echo in these previews, who is watching at home. Actually, when I think about it, the loser of this one is probably not even tuning in. Honorable mentions for Week 11. The Oregon Ducks take a trip to Iowa City for the first time since 1989 and play the Iowa Hawkeyes. Could we see a possible upset that affects who competes for a Big Ten title? Florida State heads north to South Carolina for an ACC battle with Clemson. Will the Seminoles challenge the Tigers this season? And another SEC game for postseason survival. Missouri welcomes Texas A&M to Columbia. Will Mizzou and Drinkwitz prevent this scoreline to be one-sided again? The final game for Week 11 is BYU heading to Lubbock to get it on for a Big 12 bout against Texas Tech. This is the third meeting between the two programs, with the first one going back to the 1940 season. The last time these two schools played was in 2023 back in Provo, where the Cougs evened up the series with a 27-14 win. Starting with the away team, BYU. The Cougar secondary is the critical piece for this game, with two starters returning and a few others that got some playing time in 2024 rounding out the starting spots. This unit, by this point of the season, should be well prepared for this contest in Lubbock, as the Provo Cougs should continue their top 25 pass defense, and they'll be hoping to get some big turnovers like they did in 2023. The BYU offensive ground game is the other critical bit, like it was in 2023. LJ Martin came up big for the last meeting and is back for 2025. Martin almost rushed for 100 yards when the Red Raiders came to Provo. Plus, the Cougars' offensive line looking solid, with every guy in the projected lineup starting in multiple games in 2024. These two departments in keeping the Tech offense off the field. Because like we have said last year and for the preview for the Arizona State game in Tempe, the Red Raiders are going to want to score early and coast off the lead in the second half. Head coach Kalani Sitake and BYU need to avoid this from happening, especially on the road. For Texas Tech, who I thought we were all going to dive into for 1 week, to be successful in this one at home, the Red Raiders need to protect the ball, because BYU led the nation in interceptions for 2024, and they're probably going to do that for 2025 or be close. And we're in the top 25 in team turnover margins per game. But they do have Baron Morton, who only threw 8 interceptions last season. But, another but, maybe this is the game where Morton gets picked a couple of times. Again, Tech in possession needs to protect the ball so that their game plan goes as planned. For the Red Raider defense, I'd recommend to stopping the run. That should keep things in front of them and prevent big plays, because BYU loves hitting doubles, triples, and can convert on long third downs. The secondary in 2023 kept BYU pretty quiet, although again, the turnovers screwed the defense over with terrible field position to defend. Just like on offense, if they can manage BYU on the ground, you can keep the air attack in front of you and the game plan can go as planned. Joe McGuire should have his team well prepared, just has to hope the mental mistakes don't show up in the turnover margins. So, for this Big 12 playoff game, both teams will want to play their brand of football, but maybe will have to think outside the box to capture a pivotal win. We ought to see some fireworks for this one and watch the tortillas fly in Lubbock. Okay, we'll see you guys again for some more week-by-week previews for the 2025 college football season. And bye-bye for now from the couch.